Welcome back to the broadcast. You know, it may sound like a joke at first, but it is absolutely not. It's actually a very serious condition. It's called trichotillomania, and it is known as the hair pulling disorder. So here to tell us more is Gary Hennerberg. Gary, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me
to
this
share
morning.
your story and shed light on this very, very odd disorder. What is it and how does it start?
Well, trichotillomania is hair pulling disorder, because it's a compulsive urge. And for any of us who begin as children, I mean, we begin as children pulling hair, it's unstoppable.
Pulling your own hair.
Pulling your own hair, not other people's hair, your own hair. And it's very mysterious.
This is something that normally starts in children and predominantly in little girls, is that right?
That is correct. Okay. About 9 out of 10 children who have trichotillomania are girls. So I'm actually a minority within a small minority of people.
How early did you start pulling your hair?
I was age 6.
6, okay.
And your parents obviously knew something was wrong at what point?
You know, I have yet to really fully understand when they knew. But when I discovered they knew is when they took me to a doctor. And back in the 1960s, this was something no one understood. I felt very alone, very isolated. And that's still a feeling of children even today in the age of social media.
And they probably disciplined you for it and said, stop doing that.
Yeah, you know, surprisingly, my parents, I was so blessed to have been born to parents who understood that yelling at me, that disciplining me was not the solution. And when I talk and go to the national conferences and talk to other hair pullers, we all agree that the best parents were those who really kept a distance from it.
Okay. Now, what triggers this? Is it a nervousness, or is it, have you been able to put your finger on it?
You know, I think that part of it is my mind goes adrift. You know, as children, you're reading. Reading and watching television are two really trigger points where
the boredom? Because you're
it could be boredom. I mean, I always pulled with my left hand, never with my right hand.
Are you right-handed?
I'm right-handed.
Okay, that's interesting.
Oddly enough. But it is something which it's triggered by nothing specifically, but you don't ever pull in public.
Right.
You only pull alone. And it's very shameful when you realize you've been pulling for minutes and minutes, and you look down at the floor or your desk if you were working, and you see all of your hair.
Doesn't it hurt?
Yeah, seems like.
No. It's actually a very pleasurable.
Really?
I know this sounds very bizarre, but it's a very pleasurable thing when you pull hair. Now, obviously, I've shaved my head, so I don't have hair to pull. And it's been an interesting transformation since I decided 7 years ago, just this month, to shave my head. And for that, it has been a tremendous weight off of my shoulders.
So the problem went away for you? Or do you pull on eyelashes and things like that?
Oh, yes. I still have I have a mustache, and every once in a while, if I'm in a zone, it'll start just going, and I will look in the mirror and I'm like, oh my goodness, what have I done again?
Right.
So you don't get rid of it.
You wrote this book called Urges.
Yes.
And you were also part of the vocal majority.
That's correct.
So how did this whole thing come about, your book, and then how you told your friends at Vocal Majority about your issue?
Thank you for asking, because it's one of the more redeeming parts of the story. For me, the 3 phases that I had to go through were first of all to understand what my purpose in life is, and then accepting my disorder, and then finding my gifts and talents. And for me, one of my gifts and talents is that I enjoy singing, hence singing with the Vocal Majority. And when it came down to telling them, I realized I had worn a hairpiece for a number of years, okay? And I decided to shave my head, which meant getting rid of it, and it meant, of course, an amazing change in my physical appearance.
Right. So
when I decided, I planned for months to shave my head, and then I knew that there was going to be an evening when I would have to tell the guys. And that night, when they saw me, there were guys who were looking at me, oddly, like, wow, what have you done? And I was surprised. There were people who were concerned that I had cancer and it was undergoing chemotherapy. But when I got up in front of them, I shared with them my story. And frankly, I just didn't know if there would be acceptance or not. I didn't know if they would end up putting a distance between me because of a very bizarre, disorder, which is so misunderstood. And as I was talking to them, I got to a point where I just said, I'm not keeping it a secret anymore. I'm going to talk about it. And they started applauding and applauding.
That must have been so therapeutic
and
for you.
it was so therapeutic. And I literally cried.
That's
after
awesome.
That
Well, Gary, can you tell me real quick, what are some quick, just real fast, what would you recommend? How can we help somebody?
If you observe children, especially if their hair is combed over in odd situations, talk to school.
Okay.
Talk to teachers. They may not understand it. Go to trich.org,
Okay.
TRICH.org,
All right.
or my website, hairpullingbook.com.
Thank you so much.
Gary, I know a lot of people are going to get a lot of help from your book as well.
Thank you.
Sharing in your story.
If you'd like to read more, you can check out Gary's book called Urges. Get it at Amazon.com or wherever you buy your books. All right, when we come back, we're sitting down with the host of a new show here on KTXD, and we'll hear from Oscar nominee and native Texan Matthew McConaughey. Stay tuned.